Hey everyone, wanted to talk about the B patch that's coming. Well, I shouldn't say coming anymore for TFT because it's actually out right now. It just went live like 10 minutes ago as I'm recording this video. I was expecting it to be out tomorrow so I could put this video out tomorrow, but no, they got it out today. Good, good game, right? Um, anyway, if you haven't noticed or haven't heard any of the lots of complaints going around, meta's not particularly great with the release of the new half set. Um, I fully expected a B patch. Didn't Things didn't land where they needed to land. Mostly just there just wasn't enough play testing and data done to get what Riot needed to make the changes they needed to make. So, like I said, we're getting a B patch. I'm going to roll through those and then a few other things on top of that. To start with the B patch, the two call exchanges, Rek'Sai and Sejuani. These are probably two of the best units in the game. They synergize being Hextech and Brawler and Bruiser. No, Rek'Sai's not Hextech. Hextech, he's Striker, Mutant, Bruiser. While Sejuani is Enforcer, Hextech, Bruiser. Either way, they were both Bruisers. They both did ridiculous things. Sejuani is probably the best unit in the game, and Rek'Sai was probably one of the worst balanced units in the game. Probably had the strongest ability. Not worst balance, strongest ability in the game. As you can see here, they've reduced his health, they've reduced his AD, and most importantly, the resist steal percent has gone from this scaling 30, 35, 40 to 10%. They absolutely destroyed it. Rightfully so. Essentially, this ult would hit things, and then that unit would die because this amount was really high. Like this was effectively a last whisper that we were putting that Rek'Sai just always had. Um, wasn't great. So get a pretty sizable nerf here. Sejuani, same kind of change. Lower the health, lower the AD, but also reduce the bonus defense on the spell to. It's just a minor. Sejuani is more incredibly strong because of the massive amount of health that Sejuani has, and also being Bruiser helps increase that health even further. But also because I guess it's really the Enforcer trait. Eventually you just add in Vi, and now you have Enforcer online with just Enforcer and Bruiser 2 online with just Sejuani and Vi. So you make it Sejuani 2 and you play it for the entire game, essentially. So need a nerf. Echo's getting a slow nerf. I'm curious what the stats that to make that. That's probably just an Innovator nerf. Innovator 7 is very strong, and Echo was already an incredibly strong champion before they made him Innovator. I believe they did nerf him though. Um, but like this ability is just like so strong. Period. Like almost regardless of what the numbers are, the ability is an incredibly effective utility ability. Not to mention he's scrap, assassin, and innovator now, which is an ungodly trait pool. Vex is one of the few units that's actually getting a buff here. So it's going from 100 casting health to 80 and reducing the starting mana by 10. So it means that in order to cast, you only need 40 rather than 50. Um, we're going to have to wait and see on Arcanist. I don't think anyone's really figured out how to play Arcanist yet. I'm not sure if it's actually good. The carry is supposed to be Ari. Reality, the carry is actually just Victor Silco, and you don't play any Arcanist at all. Um, but the idea here is that if Vex is a better frontline champion, then perhaps people will play Arcanist again. Zach, this I think is them taking away an ability they gave to Zach. So I think Zach already had kind of this somewhat spell damage reduction, and they upped it when they got rid of Dr. Mundo for this half set. So that way Zach kind of had to be like one of the premier frontline champions that you played in a bruiser comp. Turns out they didn't need that at all. So they just peeling it back. If you haven't noticed, the theme here is that the bruiser trait was kind of out of control. It was just too much health for a lot of things in the game to run through, and eventually Sivir would just run a Sivir or a uh, Renata would just run over you over time. Aurelia gets a slight attack speed nerf and a mild. I'm not gonna say substantial, but it's a pretty mild spell-based damage nerf. Um, I do think to be honest, I thought Aurelia kind of hit in the right place. I thought Aurelia was kind of fine. The biggest issue I think most people have with Aurelia is her spell targeting. After she kills a champion, she instantly runs into another champion to kill it, and that's usually one of the weakest champions on the board, so it gets the kill and resets. So the the idea of Aurelia is to fly across the board stabbing things. Just zip, 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 zip. But that oftentimes looks kind of it's frustrating to play against because it targets all of your weaker champions rather than something that you put a tanky item on. So it's frustrating to play against. But in their defense, Aurelia pretty commonly does get stuck on tanky champions, especially because she has to walk through front lines. Even though she'll zip to back line, she has to walk through front lines to do it. But they nerfed her. I would not be surprised to see these numbers pulled up a tiny bit. Not a lot, but particularly this 100. This 100 I feel like is really low and probably should be like 115, 120. Just kind of my thought. This could probably be 80. But no one's going to notice that. The big thing with Aurelia to me is that she's kind of feast or famine without Striker. And Striker is just a trait no one really wants to play unless they have like a Striker augment that gives them an extra Striker, so it's actually easy to play. Renata, spell damage nerf. This is actually a pretty significant nerf. I just don't think people realize it. But I'm surprised this is the direction they go. I thought they would have changed the attack speed nerf, the attack speed debuff, but this is just how they went. Sivir, in case you didn't know, Sivir was bugged. When she activated her ability, she would do animation cancels to get extra attacks in. It's a lot of damage. It's a reason why static was absolutely insane on her, because attacks just went everywhere. Anyway, they did need the nerf Sivir, so Sivir is getting nerfed. Silco. So Silco, I thought was probably the biggest problem child on the set. Silco just does too much, I think. In a way, it makes sense because he's a 5-cost utility champion. You want a 5-cost utility champion to do lots of stuff or have a significant impact on the board state. So a good example would be Yuumi. Yuumi had a huge impact on the board state, and you just kind of always wanted to play Yuumi. Silco is kind of the same. The problem is Silco was ridiculous. He'd make your frontline tank immortal for 8 seconds because nothing was ever going to kill it before it died. The attack speed bonus was out of control. These attack speed numbers were ridiculous. And in my opinion, what was kind of the most dangerous was the Mastermind mana bonus, particularly when you gave that to a Victor. Or another good example was when you gave it to Braum, and you start giving it to frontliners, and weird things started happening in the game. But they made changes to all 3 of these. I think this is probably right, all of these numbers that they've set up. I wouldn't be surprised if during the duration of the set they reworked some parts of Silco, particularly the spell and spell duration. I'd like to see what it looked like if they made it for 6 seconds of invulnerability and untargetability. I'm curious what that would look like. The reason I'm kind of interested in that is because units getting stuck on frontline champions. If you make the frontline champion invulnerable, no one's going to attack it, and everything runs away. So I'm just kind of curious what that would look like. It'd probably look really awkward and stupid, but just something to think about. Traits. Yeah, Hextech got a nerf, in case you didn't know. So the jump from Hextech 4 to Hextech 6 was too much. 400 shields every Hextech trigger was a lot. That's a lot of shields to fight through on 6 units. Like, you have to understand that, like, every 4 seconds, it's adding 240 total shields to the board. That's a wild number. Um, Now, on the other side of that argument, this number actually does kind of need to be high. Because if you're going to play a vertical Hextech comp, it needs to scale accordingly to the number of champions that you have. So if you're wasting 6 slots on 6 Hextech units, that ability needs to do a lot because you're just not getting other synergies. But at the same time, like across the board, Hextech was overpowered. Even these early game numbers, like look at these early game numbers, they're getting nerfed too. Hextech 2 and 4, if you hit early Hextech 4, like that's full win streak. Like nothing in the early game can beat that. It's too much shields. There's not enough damage. There's just hands up, you're done. They're also nerfing the magic damage. I don't think this is as significant, but it's really only significant for the actual AD champions on there. So like Sivir and kind of Lucian. Lucian's an interesting champion. I'm curious where Lucian lands after a while. I won't talk about him here. Innovator, Mechanical Bear, his self AD bonus is going down. So when I first read this, I was like, but the problem with Innovator is Innovator 7. Innovator 7 is kind of a free win. And then I realized this is actually a nerf to Innovator 7, not the Innovator 5. What I mean by that is that if you get an early... Well, you actually can't get Innovator on the first augment. I'm pretty sure they got rid of that. You can't get any Innovator stuff on the first augment, but you can get it on the second augment. So if you hit an Innovator bonus on the second augment and you play Innovator 5 at that point in the game, that's win streak straight. You go 9, you play Innovator 7, and yeah, you win the lobby. This, I would think, brings that down a level, so you're not just hard win streaking through the entire mid game and just get a free level 9 out of it. I would think. Don't honestly know. Does this also nerf Innovator 5? Yes, it does, but Innovator 5 doesn't win lobbies. Innovator 5 is like maybe a top 4 comp, and that's probably where it should be. Innovator 5 probably should not be winning games. Innovator 7 should be winning games. Innovator 5, yeah. Depends on what else you pull out of the comp. And augment changes. So I was a little surprised that we didn't see more augment changes, but my understanding of that is actually kind of they can't change text. It can't really change a lot of the text in the game. They can change the numbers, but actual text can't really be changed. So changing the augments is probably pretty difficult. But golden gifts, they're adding the number of gray orbs up. So golden gifts is I believe it is a gold and a prismatic. I don't think it's a silver. I don't think you can get golden gifts as a silver. So when you take golden gifts, you get 1 gold orb, and I believe it used to be 1 gray orb. So that gray orb was like 3 gold worth of stuff. I don't think it could be more than 3 gold. So you'd get a spat and 3 gold as your gold augment. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know. That was not worth a gold. 2 and 3, maybe. This is still probably not an augment I take, but it's where the game landed. Anyway, that's it for the B patch. This is live now. I'm about to go play it, but before I do that, there's a few other things. Oh, I didn't hit F11. Damn. Yeah, I'll do it now. There's a few other things I want to talk about. Mortdog went through a handful of other changes that are being made. So, as you can see here, so this is a kind of a preview of the next full patch coming out. Changing breakpoints of Toma traits. Significant augment rebalancing. I don't even want to go through this because I think there's a lot of augment rebalancing going through. Probably the most important one is improving the requirements for augments to appear. Getting dumb augments to appear is frustrating, and it happens a lot in the early game. In the early game, I just want generic augments. As I get later in the game, I'm willing to take gambles on specific trait augments if I already have part of it in. Trait changes. Bodyguard and Enchanter. Enchanter's in a weird spot, I think. Um, Senna is pretty underrated. Senna is a very, very, very strong champion that no one is playing. Senna is probably better than Tarek, and Tarek was a very good champion. Um, but it doesn't seem to have a home outside of Socialite Aurelia. I believe she plays pretty well in that comp. Like I said, kind of weird. But Bodyguard I can understand because Bruiser is so much better right now. And we'll get into another change in there that kind of relates to these frontline. These are really just frontline changes. Hextech and Enforcer changes. Champion changes. Brand buffs. Brand reroll should be a thing, and it's not. And that frustrates even me. Jarvan nerfs. There are cool things that you can do with Jarvan. In fact, Mortdog didn't even know about this at the time, but you can use Silco to make Jarvan instacast right on your carry. Just put him on the Silco hex, and he instantly cast. I did not realize that. That is busted. Twitch 3 nerfs. Twitch pretty good. Ashe isn't hitting where she should, in my opinion as well. Rek'Sai rework. Yeah, we kind of talked a lot about Rek'Sai already. Lulu Corki buffs. So, to kind of point out what's happening here, Yordles is trash. Probably the best way to fix this is to buff Corki. Probably. Maybe. I don't know. But Yordles is not very good. Even as an eco trait, it is not very good and needs some buffs. Malthazar Tryndamere nerfs, Morgana and Lucian. But Lucian buffs I think is a good idea because I think Lucian carry is a thing and no one's playing it and it should be a thing. Meanwhile, Morgana should be a stronger frontline champion, and she isn't. I suspect the real issue with this is the lack of CCable frontliners, or the fact that Morgana is a CCable frontliner. I think there's an issue somewhere around that realm with this. Leona buffs, and that just goes back to just front lines are not particularly good when you compare them to Brawler right now. Adjustments to Ahri, Draven buffs to the VIP. So this was a worry I had with Debonair. Well, first I'll talk about Ahri. Ahri, like I kind of said, Arcanus doesn't really make sense to play for a lot of reasons. I think people just don't really know how to play Ahri. And even if they did, they're and that's all of Ahri. How do you position Ahri? How do you position against Ahri? How do you itemize Ahri? I don't really think anyone has done any of the work to really figure that out. And it's hard to tell whether that's because she's crap, or because it's just hasn't made sense to really try it, or there's some kind of build no one understands. Don't know. I couldn't tell you. Draven and VIP. So this was kind of a worrisome thing I thought about with Debonair, was that the only really Debonair, there's two Debonair carries. Let's be clear. There's really only two. Talon really isn't one. So I'm gonna skip Talon. It's reroll Brand and Draven. So if you're going to play a Debonair comp with VIPs, would you rather have your VIP be your carry or some other unit? The answer is pretty obvious. You always want it to be your carry. So if you do not find a VIP Debonair carry, you're not going to play Debonair, ever. I think that's problematic. I think the best way to honestly fix that is to make Leona Debonair absolutely ridiculous. That would be how I go about it. Make Leona Debonair great and let Draven carry behind be good. That's my opinion on the matter. I haven't really seen what it looks like to try that out. Ramen Jin buff. Jim needs a buff. Jin Sniper is really not good, especially Jin. The only Jin I've ever used and been successful with was Double Giant Slayer because there's so much health on everything, and I actually did a lot of work with. I got a good second out of that game. But Jin might be the weakest four cost carry right now. He might be the weakest main carry. Um, I don't want to say meta game carry because you would expect Jin to be a good carry in the game, and he's just like so far below everyone else. So I do think Jin needs some buffs. I'd probably buff his attack speed, to be honest. That's probably the direction I would go. But that's just me. Slight Vi nerfs. I think there's a lot of questions as to whether or not Vi is actually good. I think Vi is okay. I think the itemization on her is a little wonky. I think people don't understand how to itemize her correctly. I'm pretty sure the most optimal itemization on her is probably in this order. Shoot. I forgot the name of the item. Bow Vest. I forget the name of Bow Vest because I haven't made that item in years. Um, Ionic Spark, and then Bramble. It's probably Bramble and Dragon's Call is kind of interchangeable. Depends on the comps you're up against. I think Bramble is a bit more utility than Dragon's Call, but that order of items is probably Vi's best optimized items. Notably, the God, I wish I remember the name of that item. Bow Vest is 100% her best item. I don't make that item, so I never know what it's called. Tom Kench so isn't hard counter by CC. Yeah, so when you run a Tom Kench into a Colossus unit, it's not sad face. Galio's area buffs. I've always been wondering about where Galio places, because I've actually never played Galio at all. I've never gotten into a situation where I thought playing Galio was smart. Zeri is a good champion, but Zeri is very good when she's debonair and can dodge like an entire unit easily. Slight Jinx buffs. Yeah, Jinx. I thought Jinx was weak before. I think she's kind of weaker now. Radiant Zephyr nerfs, Static Spark nerfs, Exploring Morello and Sunfire nerfs. Morello and Sunfire nerfs is kind of just glossing over the fact Renata and Seraphine are like such great appliers of Morello right now. Static, I honestly don't think Static is going to need a nerf. Honestly, if they fix Sivir, I don't think Static's going to be an issue. Radiant Zephyr, on the other hand, is a problem. But it's not really Radiant Zephyr's fault. It's Future Sight's fault. Future Sight is actually crazy. I think they need to get rid of the prismatic Future Sight and just make the gold Future Sight the prismatic version. People will still absolutely destroy with that. I think the prismatic Future Sight augment has like a 90% win rate. It's completely insane how strong that augment is. Alright. And lastly, 12.6. So, this is kind of a long time change that the team is trying to work on. It seems like they want to do some pretty significant reworks to things, particularly on Enforcer being the no fun trait, and Hextech being Hextech scaling, not making sense. If you look, like, I kind of talked about with Hextech. Hextech numbers, when you look at it, don't make a lot of sense. So 2 and 4 seem really low, but are incredibly strong in the late game, while 6 is this absurd number that completely destroys the late game. And there's a reason for that. It's because it needs to scale crazy in the late game, where if you're going to run it as a vertical trait. Whereas in the early game, just a little bit of shielding is significant because there's just not enough damage on the board to deal with it. Yeah, this is something to kind of keep an eye out for. I think the bigger thing is really a lot of the augment changes that are going to come. I think the augment balance is probably one of the most troublesome things about this set. And I think we all kind of knew it. Just like even before this half set, augment balance was going to be tricky. There was a lot of augments. Making sure that they're all like useful but not busted is a difficult endeavor when you're just kind of given random ones all the time. And you're just going to get a collection of them that's kind of busted. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and start playing some games, I guess, since this patch is shockingly live right now. So, I'll see y'all around. Peace out.